Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about the latest edition of Doubles Derby, DOU's third team tour alongside Doubles Premier League and Doubles World Cup. I did not really cover this tour last year. However, it has actually now switched places in the timeline with DPL. And per request, I'm here to talk about the draft, do some PRs, probably do week one predictions. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like kind of out of it. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to tell from my voice or whatever, but I have like a slight cold, so I don't know how long I'll be able to record this video. I might split it into two parts. I don't even know. But anyways, we downsized the tour from 8 teams to 6 teams, which has the effect of making each individual team like a lot stronger, right? So this is actually a pretty stacked tour compared to like last year, or even like compared to DPL. I'd say the average team here is like stronger. Just because there's less players. So like, well, less teams. So, I don't know. I feel like all these teams are like pretty solid. I do think like the draft went better for some teams than others. Because there were a couple teams that like really did not spend much credits until like later in the auction. But a few things to note. So, these doubles tours tend to have self-buys. That's kind of just like the way it's always been. Because, well, you're going to struggle to find good managers if your managers can't play. So, per usual, there are self-buys. So that's the first thing we have to factor in. Second, and why I'm bringing this up, is this is the first DOU team tour to have retains. So, retains are something that's like fairly common across Spogon. But basically, teams get to like buy players that they had last year prior to the auction, so they can secure like a same roster year after year. However, the price does go up each year. Let me see if the retain formula is here anywhere. It might not be, but there were actually like some teams that like got replaced, or well, obviously because there were like we went down from 8 teams to 6 teams, right? 2 teams didn't even make the cut, and some teams rebranded. So certain teams got different retain rights. So we're just going to go through the retains first before I do PRs, because the actual like rosters are down here somewhere. But I'm just going to go through this thread real quick. So the Red Spec Redemption, renamed from the Chargers, they retained Schuster for 10K, which is probably an a value pick considering Schuster's recent results. So they started off with 90K credits for the auction. I should also mention tiers. Derby is using the same tiers as last year, so 2 SB slots, 2 NAFDEC slots, DUU, DLC, and then the 2 old gens. Often, like, it's the way I kind of think about it in my head, like, obviously, like, the SV slots work together, the NAFDEC slots work together. DPP and ADB, like, the old gens are kind of similar, and then DUU and DLC are just kind of like whatever. We'll talk about this more when we get to the individual teams. So yeah, Redemption retained Schuster for 10K credits. Started off with 90K. So the teams that got good deals on retains are already going to like have a slight advantage heading into the auction. So just something to keep in mind. Turbo Blaze retained Hiss and Log Ice. Or Log Ice was a self-buy. But yeah, Hiss had one of the best records last year, so this is definitely value. But yeah, they had not that many credits heading into the auction because of these two. This is just really funny that the self-buy is more than is more priced than the retain, considering his record last year. Attack on Cutters, self-buy XQ for 13.5K. Pretty good price, and Gasai for 10K. Another good price. Honestly, all these are good. The only one that's really expensive is like Z for 19K for the Ice Riders, but I mean, 19 is still like cheaper than what Z would probably go for in the auction, right? So this is good value. Although I'm not sure it's good value for DLC Z. We'll talk about that later. SMH. Oh yeah, the draft. Full. And then Gods, self-bought Jello, and retained Chris for 13K. Probably like the most reasonable of the self-buy prices and the retained prices. Both of these players would probably be around this range. in the auction. Chris might be a little less expensive. Jello might also be a little less expensive, but these are not bad. But yeah, those are the retains. I'd say like probably Redemption benefited most from retains and self buys, although might have also been like Tachyon Cutters. I think this was really good. This was like kind of just like expected value. This is like pretty good. Considering the player records last year, but I'm not like sure like how well that's going to hold up because just like each team is like stronger. So players that were like really good last year, and the pool situation is like a lot different for a lot of tiers. For example, like DUU is like really stacked this year. NatDex is really stacked this year. So this is while this is like a good deal, I don't think this is the retain plus self buy I would rate the most highly. I think it's this one. And yeah, this one is just about average. So a couple average ones, but two teams really benefited from these, I'd say. So yeah, here's the actual results of the auction. I'm not really sure which I'm going to use more. I'm probably going to be looking more at the lineups. But I'll just go over each team real quickly here. So Ice Riders, historically a team that drafts a lot of VGC players. Or I mean, Z always kind of tends to do that between DPL and Derby. Honestly, like not as much as usual, but it's like still like kind of right. Like you have Z, Burns, Kunal, and Staraptor as the VGC players. And then some like DOU staples like Madara, who's had like a really hot last few months. Yellow Pate, good lower tier player. C for either ADV or DPP. Nadando, probably for DPP. I think yeah. C's ADV, Nadando's DPP probably. Let me double check that. Oh no, DPP is red zone. Okay. And then yeah, Staraptor and Waffle is two good solid SV players. I'm not even sure if they're like actually like playing. I think Waffle wanted to bench. Waffle was the last pick in the draft. Went undefeated last year, by the way. For 3K, went was the last pick. That's the power of signing up on the last day and saying that you want to bench, I guess. So yeah. Okay, and then Tachyon Cutters. This team is interesting, I think. I'm not really sure how to rate it. I think I think with this team is like has a lot of good players, but they're kind of just like playing tiers that I would like not be expecting them to be slotting in. I don't know if that makes sense. Like XQ and Gasai makes sense, right? SMB playing ADV is like XD, right? Like SMB is like a really great player, but it's like why are you wasting like the best player on your team in like coin flip tier, you know? It's not as bad as it used to be. So we'll see what SMB can do in that tier, but I still feel like someone of his skill level would probably like get more have like a I think skill matters less in ADV than the other tiers. Full disclosure. Well, ADV and DPP. I think those are the Mickey old gens. It's better than when they had T-Wave and Explosion, but I still feel like putting like I mean he signed up for ADV, right? I feel like it's just not the maximum value you're gonna get from like a really good player. I don't know. Not to overstate that point too much. Then Iceberg is playing SV instead of NatDex. Fair enough, I guess. He has like fairly good results in both tiers, although it's been kind of a while since he had like a really good tour run. And then Bagel and DPP, yeah, I mean that makes sense, right? But I feel like again, same thing with DPP and ADP. I mean, I'm kind of just like a hater of those tiers, just in general. I think they're like okay, but like I feel like when you put like your two best players in those tiers, like the odds of them losing to some Mickey stuff is like higher than if you put them in like a more real tier. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, Bagel and DVP is not like surprising. He has really good records in that tier. He's like on council, whatever. And then what else on this team? Virtual and NatDex, Sea Life and NatDex. I mean, both of these are fine. Although my mind's just like kind of foggy. I can't remember if Sea Life played NatDex and Derby last year. I think they did. Oh yeah, they did, right? Yeah, they did. So I guess NatDex is fair. Frixel hasn't like actually like played much Natdex since last year, but he's like been in these like team tours. Helped me out specifically a fair amount in the last couple of Natdex tours, although I like barely prepped, but Virtual was definitely very helpful. So I think like the Natdex makes sense. I don't know. Maybe I'm like overjudging this lineup order. I think it's like a strong team. Uh, it's a strong team, but I just feel like these old gen slots are kind of bugging me, just because of the quality of the players that are being slotted there. Um, and then Eric, someone who's had occasionally like really really good DOU results in SV. I think Eric is one of like the highest value like things like players you can get. We'll just double check what his price was. Let's see. Yeah, 4.5 is crazy. I think he went like 6.2 last year or something. Definitely a player that I rate fairly highly. And then Chainless Joe, Smudge, Volcarona VGC, I guess, for subs. I would have liked to see Chainless Joe be played in this after a good record last year, but I guess like they had their plan right. Same thing with Smudge and Volcarona VGC. Volcarona VGC had some really good SV results, but I guess like it's kind of unproven in like a team tour setting, so I get it. But yeah, free Chainless Joe, IMO, was a good Natdex slot for my team last year. All right, Turbo Blaze. I think, full disclosure, I think this is one of the strongest teams in the draft. Might be a bit biased because I have a few friends on this team, right? But I think this is one of the teams to beat. I think together with like Ice Riders and Turbo Blaze are like the teams that scare me the most. So you got Long Ice and Hiss, those we already talked about those. Fairly good value for this. ESM, went 9-1 last year and then was less expensive this year somehow. Granted, he does have like some unavailability or something, but I still feel like that's very cheap for a player of his caliber. Again, you just don't really know like how like motivating he's going to be for a tour like this, but he always like puts in a fair amount of effort. So definitely a good buy. Ninja Snapple for ADV, good buy as well. She's gotten more experience since she played the tier last year, and so I anticipate Ninja will do a lot better this year in ADV, especially with like the tier like being a lot more stable. I'd say I think like we've started to see things like settle down for that tier. Then you got Rat Packer, presumably for Natdex. Yeah, for Natdex. Rat Packer hasn't actually like played a whole lot of Natdex, but he's been like one of the prominent like influences on like the tier's building. He was one of the people that like first popularized like Stack Attack and Natdex with a lot of various archetypes. So definitely a solid buy for Natdex. I'm really like looking forward to seeing how he plays. Then Faye for SV. Faye for SV. Strong player. Tends to go about neutral usually in DOU team tours, but it's been a while. Definitely expect like a solid record out of Faye this year. But it's a little hard to like predict, because it's just been a while. But definitely like a player with like a really high ceiling. Like ESM plus Faye, SV is just like a ridiculous core, to be honest. I'd probably rate that higher than like every other SV, to be honest. Yeah, it's not even close. That's like infinitely better than the other teams. If like both players play at their potential. I think SV is actually one of the weaker pools, to be honest. Not that we don't have like good players playing them, but like compared to like the lower tiers, I think this like stands out because these are just like this is just the best SV core. We got laptops for DPP. Had a really good record in Natdex last year. A little bit surprised that they're not playing Natdex, especially with Rat Packer, who I think helped with their building in Natdex last year. But I mean, fair enough, I guess. Laptops will probably put up a good record in DPP. And then Seifa for DLC, one of the best DLC players. I was really surprised how cheap Seifa was, but it was kind of just a function of like when certain people got knobbed in the draft, So I think this team is like really strong, like all the way through. Like I think this is pretty good, right? Let's just see the lineup says in like a starter with this full this year. But I anticipate it'll be fine. Like DLC is one of the stronger players. DVP is like a solid DPP player. ADV is like the only ADV main. And then SV you just have the strongest core. So like I think this team has like a lot of potential. The only reason like things could possibly go bad for this team is just the fact that like yes they have like really solid players in these lower tiers, but like so does every other team basically. So even if like players that put up like really good records in like the last couple of years could struggle against like some of like the higher power level slots, but I anticipate like they're going to be like 2-0 in like a lot of their weeks. At the very least, like 1-1 in SV. So that's definitely an advantage, but it's just going to come down for this team to like these lower tiers and how like their picks are going to hold up. And then the bench is fairly strong too. Raph, a former SCL player, a couple of years ago, he was like a substitute at SCL with Faye. Getting Faye and Raph on the same team is like hilarious when you consider everything else they managed to pull off this staff. And then Hugo and Trace, two solid players, last two bench slots. So I think this team is very good. We'll have to see. But I think this is one of the teams I expect to do very well, based on their draft only. Facial week. Kunal described this team as the coworker team. So make it that what you will. But these are just people that are like, this is on average like an older team. Because these people have been around for a while. So that's like both an advantage and a disadvantage at the same time, right? Like, because you're not, at the end of the day, like, you're not sure how much time these people are going to have to like prep. But I think like they have a couple like really good slots, especially in like these first couple of names, right? Karu Act Dad 1 is like a really, really strong like first three. And from there, it's like I'm not as confident in it, right? Like Voltix is a good slot for like Natdex or DLC. I'm not sure which one he's playing. Probably DLC. Let me double check. Yeah, Natdex. Okay, and then John 1240 is playing DLC. Okay. I feel like I don't know. Not really sure what my thoughts on this team are. It's actually kind of complicated. Like, I feel like it's another team where I'm like, okay, do we have the people in the wrong slots? You know, AMRAP Dad 1 is like strong in DVP and ADP. I think this is like good value for these two tiers. Honestly, Dad 1, one of the best DPP players. Would probably be my pick to have the best record in DPP. To be honest, Act and DUU very solid as well. I'm just like, I'm less confident in DLC, SV, and Natdex. I think you have like Voltix and Natdex is fine. Akaru and Natdex is good. Akaru has put up good records. But these are not, I don't know. I think like Akaru doesn't really build for himself at Natdex, I think. So it's probably gonna have to be Voltix putting in a lot of work in Natdex. I don't know. I think this was like. I think it's just like SV that I don't really know what to think of. Like, Charlotte is a really good player, but I I can't remember the last time I actually like played SV. And Enzo Nana could be like either really good or like mid. Hard to say, honestly. There's a lot of I think there's like a lot of question marks for this team, but the potential is there, right? Like you have like a really good roster all the way through here. The question is like, how much is John 1240 gonna? How well is John 1240 gonna do? Doubles Little Cup against the DLC pool, because the DLC pool is like honestly really good this year. And then I think the SV core is like fine because most of the other SV cores are not like that strong. I think this is probably like middle of the pack for SV. Even like at a minimum. I don't know. Yeah, this is a good team. It's a good team. My question is again just like how much time are these people going to have to prep? Who's going to be doing the prep? Um, et cetera, et cetera. Let's see. They got a couple good buys though. They got Toxygen for Natex, who's apparently not played. I wanted to see Toxygen and Natex. This makes me sad. Um, I don't know if this. I mean, this might not be the permanent lineup, right? Like, I think this team would be stronger if you had like Voltix and DLC, and then like Toxygen and Natex. I guess with that lineup, I actually think this team could be really good. Um, the current one is just like raising some questions for me. But they have a pretty good bench as well. Although maybe one of the weaker benches, Kant and Seraphs. Just two players that haven't have like a lot to prove. I'd say before I'd like consider them like starter level. Um, I don't know. I think yeah. My thing with this team is I think it has like a really good top end, but it like kind of falls off a little bit. Um, maybe more so than some of the other teams, but again, like the top three players are very good. Like getting Act, Dad One, and Hikaru on the same team is like very very good. Um, interesting draft. I mean, like this team didn't have any retains or self buys, so like I think this is good, um, but definitely felt like they had like a little bit of credits left over, and that was kind of how the auction went for this team. They didn't really buy a lot of players early on in the draft, and so they had like they were like by the end like they had like the most credits, and I feel like that you kind of see the effects of that here. I think like they got good value. Okay, yeah, like it just got good value out of the top end, but I'm like less confident in like the second half of their picks. Um, Red Spec Redemption. Now this team is interesting. This could be one of the strongest teams, honestly. Um, you have the US West SV duo, Schuster and SR Volt Mike. I think this is like an above average like SV core, just considering like these two players have worked together before. I'm anticipating good records out of the two of them. Um, and then Nails and Natix. Nails is just probably one of the pick stats, one of the best Natix records. So that's a plus for the team. Kira Kusai, someone I'd probably call like a Natix main. One of the more like prominent Natix players, especially in like individual tours for like the last year. Um, but I do have like I have like some questions as to like how well they'll be able to like perform compared to like the rest of the Natix pool, because again, I think it's just like really strong. Uh, but I still think this is above average Natix. You got Fespi and DUU. That's one I'm like not super confident in. Because I can't remember the last time Fespi played DUU. It was certainly not this gen, so it's probably before my time. Um, but I mean, it's kind of just like a clicker tier, anyways. But I don't know. I'm just not really sure. Because the DUU pool is like really good. These are all like people that have like some of the best DUU players the last couple of years, and then Fespi, right? So I'm curious to see how he'll adapt. Played DPP the last couple of derbies. Para DLC, another like a player that played like a lot of DLC in the past, but not really much this gen. I think this is like a good slot. Uh, but probably we'll have to see, honestly. Uh, and then Keg, apparently this is Fespi's brother. If he's even close to as good as Fespi was at DPP, it should be fine. Um, Fespi put up really good records in DPP the last couple of years, and if he's helping him, I think this could be like a solid like value pick. Let's see. And then Yoda and ADV again, same thing with S&B. Like, why are we putting our good players in ADV? That's not how it's supposed to be. I'm hating, but this is not a tier I've ever seen Yoda play before. I don't think it's like that crazy like to learn or anything. Um, but I don't know. I'm curious to see how Yoda does. I think like ADV is just a tier I don't really rate very highly. I think this roster is like pretty solid overall. Um, Probably like slightly above average. I'll have to see where I compare the teams at the end. Um, I don't know. Interesting team. It's kind of just like a few people in slots where I'm like not certain like how confident they're going to be. Uh, Especially like these bottom four. I think Para DLC is like really solid, but like the other three, I'm like, it's hard for me to really like make an estimate here, right? Um, Based on the information that I have, which is not much. And then finally, it's my team, which honestly like looks like fairly similar-ish, I think, to like the way this roster did last year. Jello, Chris Numbers, Nito, Juma, one of the best ADV players. Nito is someone who plays a lot of these lower tiers to good success. Myself, Flying Beagle, Hasawa, one of the better DLC players. Eat Foods, one of the like rising Natdex players. And Petra and Big Pichu to round it off. I'm not going to comment a whole lot on my own team, but I think this is like a solid roster. If I'm being objective, I'd probably rate it around middle of the pack, just because I think like Turbo Blaze and like Redemption and like Ice Fighters are like also really good teams. But I think there's definitely a lot of potential with this lineup. I think I'm more confident in like where each player on this team is slotted than I am on some of the other teams. Like some of the like Derby's kind of an interesting tour because you get a lot of players like playing tiers for the first time, which is really cool to see. And so a lot of these teams have like interesting roster decisions in terms of like where people are played. I honestly don't really have that with my own team, and that's not really like really something that I would say is like too heavily biased here. I think these are just like if like before the draft, if you like gave me these people and like asked me where they'd be played, this is what I would have told you. For the most part, like Jello could be Natix, but he could be DVP too. Same with Nito, could be DU, could be Natix, but I think like people are slotted in the right places for this team. Um, so I think this could be a good team. All right, let me get to the actual power rankings. How will I rate these? I think honestly, it's going to be hard to put one of these teams at the bottom. I think they're all like fairly even. I mean, I say that every year, but like especially in a tour like this with like 6 teams, like all the teams feel like have some like really good picks. I want to put Ice Riders high, but I think I'm going to put Turbo Blaze number one, um, because I think the value Turbo Blaze is getting out of like which players in which slots are like slightly higher than for Ice Fighters. So I think I'd rank Turbo Blaze first, probably Ice Fighter second, um, Redemption third, maybe. Um, Actually, that's not really fair. Probably Spatial Week third. Uh, hmm. Kind of trying to think of this in terms of like how many slots on your team am I confident in? Like on Turbo Blaze, I'm confident in like probably like at least like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 of these slots, right? Um, Ice Fighters, I'm confident in like 5. Um, just based on like where people are slotted. Like DUU Madara, very good player, has good DUU results. The NatDeck score is like really, really strong. Maybe the strongest NatDeck score in the pool. Um, Mr. After Paint is like probably average, slightly below average for SV, I'd say. Um, Two good players, but I think like the other teams are like I'd be more afraid of facing them in SV. Um, the question for this team is like Z and DLC. Z played DLC like for one game last year and like put up good results. In that 1 week, I guess, good result. Period. Um, but it still feels like out of place to me, especially for like the self buy price. But I mean, fair enough. Like, do you have really have anyone else to play DLC? I mean, Redstone could probably play it. I don't know if he like signed up for it. Um, so I think like just based on like that, I think that's why I'm rating Turbo Blaze slightly higher. Just because I think I think on paper like the players Ice Fighters has is like maybe a little bit stronger, but I think the order is just like a little bit like less than what I would say I would want to see. So probably yeah, Turbo Blaze first, Ice Fighter second. Um, third, hmm. Third is probably Taco Cutters. Um, hmm. It's hard to actually. I don't know. I think I'd rate probably. I guess yeah. Redemption next, then Spatial Week, then Tack on Cutters. I think like all those three teams is like really hard for me to like to rank in order. But I don't know. I'd like just like not really. I'm not really confident in like the order of these slots. I just feel like these are all players that you get more value out of playing in another tier, except for maybe like XQ and Eric, right? Because Eric has basically only played SV, and then XQ is just like a really good DUU player, especially the last like 6 months. But every other slot, I'm like, could be somewhere else, and I would be happier with it, you know? Um, I don't know. And like Redemption is like, actually, yeah, I'd say, okay, Turbo Blaze first, Ice Fighter second. Um, yeah, Redemption third, Spatial Week, and then Attack on Cutters. The Gods will probably be in like the middle somewhere. In terms of like where I'd rank my own team, but I'm not really going to go into depth on that. But yeah, I think the top two is pretty clear to me. Is like Ice Fighters and Turbo Blaze, but then like these middle three, I like you can put them in any order, and I think it'd be reasonable. I just think like Redemption has like really high upside if you can get these players to perform in these tiers, because like the top half of it, I really like, and then I like Para and DLC, and then Spatial Week is just like a lot of experienced players, so like I'm gonna be surprised if this team doesn't make playoffs. Um, the question is just like activity for me with this team. Um, and then Hack and Cutters, I just feel like I don't know, like Iceberg and SV just like whatever, you know. How much prep are you going to be able to give Eric? Like I don't know if Eric's going to build his own teams or whatever. I think first of all that Dex is like good, but like I'd rather see him in SV, Sea Life. I guess it's fair for Natdex, and then SMB. I'd rather see in like something that's not ADV. And then Bagel and DVP is fine, but I'd still rather see him in SV. So this feels like 8 SV players almost. Um, and that's why I'm like not super confident. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, that's that. I guess now I'll go into like predictions for this first week here. Um, where is the predictions format? No predictions format. Come on, man. Okay. Let's, I want to make sure I don't accidentally tag people. All right. So for this first one, all right. For Ice Spider Spatial Week, I think probably go with Staraptor over Enzonana. I think Staraptor has like a really high like ceiling, um, but I'm not sure like he's really like reached that in DOU tours yet. It's a player I rate fairly highly. It's just a close game. I don't know. I think I would take Staraptor here, just like without any other information. I think like where like if I predict for Enzonata, it depends on like how Enzonata has done in the same tour, because it's hard for me to predict like how well he's going to do at the beginning. Um, he has up tours, he has down tours. So I think I win Raptor just because it's the first week. Um, like if Enzonata wins this week, then I have like a much higher chance of like predicting him. Like in subsequent weeks. I think I like Charlotte over Yellow Paint here. I think Charlotte's play is just like a little bit higher than Yellow Paint's. Yellow Paint plays like a more variety of tiers, but I think in SV I'm not super confident in picking him against Charlotte. I know a lot of people that rate Charlotte's play really highly. That decks, I think I gotta both Ice Riders here. I think this is just again. I think this is the strongest Nat score. I think Kunal has a lot of good ideas to go into this tour with. Um, and then Burns is just Burns. It's hard for me to like predict for anyone against Burns, um, especially with like Kunal probably helping with the team building here, right? I think like just on the builder, I just expect these two players to win. We'll have to see. Okay, DUU, Monitor versus Act. I think hmm, Monitor is like the hot hand right now, but I think generally I like Act more in team tours. I'm going to predict Act here. It's a little bit. I think this is very close. A lot of the DU games are going to be like this, but I think I've never seen Madara play DU in a team tour, and I've seen Act play DU in a team tour to great success. Right. In general, I just think Act is like a stronger team tour player, so I think that's where my like preference here is. Even though I think both players are around equally strong in general. Okay, Z versus John 1240. I'm gonna have to pick Z. Just because it's Z. And they looked really strong in DLC the last time they played. I think it's just like a player diff thing here. To be honest, Dad One versus Red Zone. I think I gotta take Dad One. I think Dad One's again probably like who I'd rate highest in DPP. Um, Probably in this pool. It's close. I don't know. I think Dad One is just like one of my favorites to do really well on the tour. Red Zone does have experience, but I think Dad One is just a safer pick. Let's see. C versus Ramp. I think C is one of the stronger ADV players the few times they've played, so I think I'll predict her over Ramp. Yeah, I don't know. I know Amramp was very upset about Explosion being banned, so we'll see what he can come up with here. So I think I'm predicting Ice Riders here. I think again that kind of makes sense, right? I said Ice Riders was probably one of the stronger teams. Let's see. Although I do think like you have like I'd expect good performances out of Act Dad One. It's just like rough for like one of your other stronger players, Akaru, because Burns is probably one of the few players in Natdex too that I would rate above him in Natdex. Okay, on to the next one. I guess I'm only predicting two of these. Okay, XD. This is an interesting one. I'm gonna start at the bottom actually. Let's see. All right, SMP versus Yoda. What do I got here? This is an exciting match for ADV. We're going to see some really good ADV games. Especially those like complaining about the players that have been slotted here. Um, I think I'm really looking forward to this game in particular this week. I'm gonna go with SMB, um, but I just because SMB is one of the greatest TU players of all time. Yoda also has really great results, but I think in a vacuum, I'd probably rate SMB slightly higher, although I'd rate Yoda high as well. It's hard for me to predict. I think like I just don't know how much either of these players have like looked at the tier. And so like against most people, I'll get a bold SMB. Like it's not really like in most situations, SMB is going to be the better player. Especially in like this ADV pool, I'd like SMB is probably the best player. Um, Gma has put up really good results in particular though, so I think I'm like really looking forward to when SMB plays Gma in ADV. Um, but yeah, I mean it's again it's just like a pretty simplistic tier. I feel like so part of me is like, damn, why is Pro playing ADV? But I'm still gonna give the edge to the player I think is like one of the best players of all time, right? All right, Big O versus Keg. I don't really know. We don't have any information about Keg so far. I mean, like Bagel is the safe bold here. Like Fespi is going to need to help Keg to prep really hard to beat Bagel in DPP. I think. Gasai versus Para. This is close. Gasai had one of the best records last year, and Para hasn't played DLC in a long time, so this is like kind of hard to rank. I think I'm going to lean Para because I think he's going to be motivated playing the tier after like a long time. Um, and I think that probably lends to like me expecting better results out of him early on in the season. Um, this is close though. Gosai's just a little bit inconsistent, even though she had a really good tour in DLC last year. Um, yeah, I'll pull Para. All right, XQ versus Fespi. I gotta give it to XQ. Just more experience in the tier recently. Um, although I think like it's just been a while since we've seen Fespi play. He only plays like twice a year. Definitely could put up a fight here, but I think it's XQ all the way. Okay, Frixel versus Terrakusai. This is interesting. I'm gonna give it to Frixel because I think like I have more confidence in Frixel's ability to perform in team tours than Terry, because Terry has only played like one or two team tours ever. Sea Life versus Nails. No offense to Sea Life, but I'm picking Nails. Um, Nails is just a goat. One of the goats for sure. I'm really curious to see what he like comes up with this week, or really throughout the whole season, but especially early on. All right, SR Volt Mike versus Iceberg 77. I got to give it to the West Keys here. Probably for both slots. I think I'm just expecting better chemistry out of Mike plus Trister building SV than I am out of these two. Um, I don't know. Eric versus Trister is really close though. I think this is going to be a good game. Probably. I don't know. Trister has had like a lot of results recently, but I think Eric had a really good record in World Cup. But I think like Trister is more self-sufficient when it comes to team building, and I think that's an advantage here. And I think odds are SR Volt Mike is going to have more help building than Iceberg. And Mike also had a really good World Cup record as well. Anyways, that's going to be it. So yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week, hopefully. Maybe.